What's up, guys? I'm Laura from Reading in Bed, and today we're going to have a quick chat about The Black Tulip by Alexandre Dumas. So this is a warm-up round for my big summer read-along, which is going to be The Count of Monte Cristo. This is a much slimmer volume, but it has some strange parallels to The Count, which we'll get into. All the information about the actual read-along is on my blog, also in a previous video, so I'll link those. Now, this book is a later book, so it's written like almost 10 years after The Count of Monte Cristo, I think, so he was already an established, celebrity writer at that point. It's much smaller, and some of the parallels are that both stories, The Count and this one, have to do with someone being wrongly accused of being a traitor by someone who is jealous and just wants to, kind of get rid of someone, so they accuse them of treachery of some kind, wrongful imprisonment. But where they sort of veer off is that The Count of Monte Cristo then goes deep, I think, into the revenge aspect. Edmond Dantes escapes and then wreaks revenge, whereas Cornelius, our protagonist here, it's not really about escape and revenge. It's just about, it's more about the love story that develops between him and the jailer's daughter. Go figure. But yeah, the other thing that is similar between the two is there's a basis in actual history. So with The Count, we've got Napoleon playing a role in that initial sort of like wrongful imprisonment. Here we go pretty in depth with some 17th century Dutch politics, which is what made this book really difficult for me to get into. Unlike in The Count of Monte Cristo, which I have started a little early. I'm just a few chapters in, but like there's a bit of that historical stuff, but it gets into the plot like right away. There is no lead up. You were just in it. Whereas here, the first 3 or 4 chapters are focused on these 2 Dutch like statesmen and William of Orange, who I think eventually becomes King of England and other places. But it's about like just the changing political winds, and these Johann and Cornelius are brothers who were in power but eventually get literally torn apart by a mob. And then our protagonist Cornelius is the godson of the Cornelius who is killed horribly in the first chapters of this book. But yeah, there's, for such a small, like 200 or so pages book, I think like the first 50 are really quite focused on these 2 characters who were real and who aren't really part of the story. Like the fact that Cornelius has a godfather who, was this political prisoner, like that is how things kind of get kicked off, but it's not, like it didn't need to be that long. And it actually took me a while to get into this book because of it. And I had to use Wikipedia and I had to look things up and remember, what was going on. And I don't know if Dumas' contemporary readers would be too up on that history too. Like you figure in The Count, anyone reading a book in France in the 1840s is going to know who Napoleon was. Is going to know what the whole deal is there, because it wasn't that long ago and it was their own country. Whereas this is about a different country, at the time was almost 200 years in the past. So yeah, it's a bit tricky that way. But once I got into the actual plot, then it gets interesting. Then we're getting into tulip mania. Cornelius, the godson, is like this rich master tulip grower who has a neighbor who is very jealous of his ability to grow tulips. And it's not fair because the neighbor's like, I'm a true artisan, but I don't have the money to have all the great equipment that Cornelius does. So, maybe I'll accuse him of being a traitor, get him thrown in prison, and then my tulips will be the best. Like it escalates quickly. And then like once Cornelius is in jail, there's this whole contest about growing a perfectly black tulip, like devoid of any color. The petals are supposed to be perfectly black, for which there's a prize of 100,000 florins, which was like a lot of money. But once Cornelius is thrown in jail, like for life, with basically no trial, he somehow smuggles in a couple of his, they're called offsets, so they're like part of a bulb, I think. So he somehow has them on him, which like that was the whole point of his neighbor getting him in jail. He wanted to go steal these things, and then, he doesn't even get them because Cornelius takes them to jail. So, it's kind of like ridiculous and how silly and overwrought the plot is. And then, of course, Cornelius falls in love with Rosa, the jailer's daughter. But his passion for Rosa versus the tulips that he smuggled in are at least equal, if not a little tipped in favor of the tulips. So then, of course, he has Rosa plant the tulips and all of this, and eventually it turns into a very adventurous, not escape story. Unlike the Count, Cornelius doesn't escape, but he gets Rosa to grow the tulip, and then it's a race to get this tulip recognized because it does bloom and it is black. It's a race to get it recognized. It's not like Rosa can just take a picture and email it somewhere. She has to transport it to Florence or somewhere. And of course, this neighbor is following her, and it's like a crazy plot. It moves very quickly once you're into it, once you're over that hump of all the historical information. And a couple of the things that surprised me about this book, two things. One is that Dumas often, I don't know if it's called breaking the fourth wall when it's in a book, but I'll just read you a short passage here to show you. So this is, I think, when Cornelius is realizing that, that he's imprisoned for life and that he's missing out on this whole tulip contest that he wanted to do. He says, "Wasted labor of so many years, destruction of such sweet hopes. Was his discovery then going to end in nothingness, as he would in death? In this prison there was not a blade of grass, not a fragment of earth, not a ray of sunshine." At that thought, Cornelius lapsed into a fit of black despair, from which he was roused only by an extraordinary occurrence. What occurrence was that? We shall tell the reader in the next chapter. So there's a lot of that at the end of chapters, little asides to the reader. And even within chapters, there's little kind of nudge jokes that are between the narrator or the author and the person reading it. And they're just kind of cutesy and funny. They almost go a little too far where it's okay, calm down. But it's a short enough book. I think that it's sort of comical, and I liked it. The other thing that surprised me, I kind of alluded to the fact that Rosa, the jailer's daughter, becomes the primary actor in the drama because Cornelius is in jail. He's imprisoned. And although he does at one point train a pigeon and somehow get a message to his old nurse in another city, which is, that happens within a couple of pages. But for the most part, Cornelius can't do anything. He needs to act through Rosa. And so Rosa becomes very active. She is not the typical 19th century female romantic interest who's just always trembling and, love struck, although she is that too. But the action really follows her, especially once the tulip blooms and they see that it's black and they have to go to the horticultural society. She's the one who has to do all that. She has to run away from home and hire a coach and evade this jealous neighbor. And it's quite thrilling. There's someone at the door. Hang on. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, kids answering the door when they probably shouldn't be. But anyways, so I've lost my train of thought. But basically, there were a couple of things in this book I really liked. I liked Rosa. I liked the kind of corny asides. I found the historical information a bit dense, a bit tough to get into, but overall, I mean, this is a very quick read, and it actually works really well, I think, as a warm-up to reading The Count, which is much larger. So if you are planning to take part in my read-along, I would actually recommend getting a hold of this, and if you can, getting a hold of the summer issue of The Happy Reader, because I think they're going to make really good companions. And so, once your appetite is whetted for wrongful imprisonment and thwarted love and stuff, then we get to get our revenge on with Edmond Dantes. So thank you for watching, and I will check in as this read-along goes along, but check on the blog for all the details. All right, thanks for watching.